Hi, my name's Dave Annell. I'm a professional genealogist based in England and a former family history specialist at the UK's National Archives. I've been researching my own family history for over 40 years and I haven't finished yet. I want to make it clear right from the start that I'm a big fan of digitisation, the process which allows us to access key digital images of genealogical sources from all around the world, from the comfort of our own homes 24 hours a day. Digitisation has revolutionised the way that we carry out our research, and it's almost entirely a good thing. I've been a researcher for long enough to remember the days when everything we wanted to look at came in the form of a physical document, and you had to go to a record office or a library to look at it. Just occasionally you might find that what you wanted to see was on microfilm or increasingly on microfiche, but you still had to actually put your coat on and go out of the house to see it. So I was there at the very beginnings of digitisation, and I've watched it all develop over the past 20 years. It started with the archives themselves launching their own digitisation projects, and then of course major organisations like Family Search soon got involved. And it wasn't long before commercial companies started to take an interest and began to develop partnerships with the archives. The census returns for England and Wales were among the first major record sets to be digitised, and then the commercial companies started to look further afield. And the next obvious set of records to get the digitisation treatment was the vast collection, or rather collections because they're spread all around the country, of the Church of England's parish registers. So they entered into partnerships with a variety of county and local record offices with the aim of digitising their collections of parish registers, and these partnerships had and have some very obvious benefits. First, there's a benefit to the archives. It allows them to make their records available to users around the world without clogging up their desperately under-resourced reading rooms and without causing any damage to the documents, while providing them with some much-needed revenue. And clearly benefit the users, again by providing unlimited access, for a fee, to researchers all around the world. And of course, there's a benefit to the commercial websites themselves. New records equals new subscribers equals increased income. It's not rocket science. About 10 years ago now, the London Metropolitan Archives was one of the first to have their parish register collections digitised in partnership with Ancestry. And overnight, the release of the London Parish Register collections on Ancestry changed the way that we were able to search for our London ancestors. Whereas we would previously have had to wind through scores of microfilms hoping to find the record we were looking for, now we could search the whole collection in one go. It really was a revolutionary change. Other counties followed both on Ancestry and on Find My Past. Dorset, Leicestershire, Hertfordshire, various parts of Yorkshire, Staffordshire, Cheshire, and now the majority of English counties are covered. Not all, but most of them. Now, I'm a firm believer in the idea that you're only ever going to get the best out of the records you're looking at if you fully understand exactly what it is you're searching. What does the record set actually include? Now, the implication, even if it's not an explicit claim on the websites, is that in each case what we're looking at is the parish collection for the whole county. But is it? Are the collections really as complete as we're led to believe they are? Well, of course, no, they're not, and realistically they can't be. For a start, relatively few parishes have registers going right back to 1538, when Thomas Cromwell passed his order requiring registers recording every wedding, christening and burying in each parish to be kept. Then the ravages of time, along with fire and damage caused by rodents and other pests, have led to significant loss and damages to registers. Some parishes have even chosen to retain their registers and not to deposit them with the relevant record office. And some county record offices don't cover the whole of the ancient county. Certain registers are held elsewhere. And even if the registers for a certain parish are held at the county record office, it's possible that the arrangements made at the time of deposit don't give the record office permission to sell on to a third party. The depositing of parish registers is an ongoing process, so some registers now held by the record office may not have been held by them at the time the digitisation project took place. Now, some of these gaps may be plugged by the survival of bishops' transcripts, which are often held by the County Record Office, so you'll sometimes find these as part of an online collection. But the truth of the matter is that no collection, no county collection, is ever going to be complete. So it's clear then that there are any number of reasons why the county-wide collection may not be as comprehensive as you'd like it to be. But you'd like to think that at the very least, the records available online as part of a county-wide collection represent a comprehensive collection of the relevant holdings of the archive in question for which they have the necessary rights. But do they? Well, I'm afraid again that the answer is no. I've come across countless instances where it's clear that a register that should form part of an online county-wide collection simply isn't there, and not for any of the reasons mentioned above. I'm going to give you just two examples of this, one on Ancestry and one on Find My Past. So we'll start with my local parish, Bushey in Hertfordshire. In 2012, Find My Past entered into a partnership with Hertfordshire Archives to digitise and index their parish registers. As part of this, Find My Past have provided a list of parishes covered by their database, which we can see down here. We click on Hertfordshire Parish List, and then we will scroll down to marriages. We're going to scroll down to the parish of Bushey. Now we'll see here the dates are by necessity lacking in detail. It's simply showing a from and to period for each parish. We can see here that with Bushey, we're covering the years 1685 to 1915. Now, if we take the example of, let's look at these people here. The family down the middle here, Edward Treacher and his wife Sophia. We can see them here in the 1851 census, living in Bushey. They were both born in Bushey, and they've got a young son called James, who was also born in Bushey. It's reasonable, therefore, to expect them to have married sometime in the late 1840s, and if not in Bushey itself, certainly somewhere very nearby. Now, a search on the FreeBMD website, let's just go to that here. The FreeBMD website, we can search for the marriage of surname Treacher, first name Edward, and then we'll put in the spouse's name, Betts Sophia, and we'll just run that search. And we get one result, and it's in the December quarter of 1849. It's in the Watford registration district, and if we click on the page number here, we can see that we have a match between Sophia Betts and Edward Treacher and all the other people whose marriages are recorded on the same page in the GRO's register. So we know that they married in that quarter. Now clearly the Watford registration district, which we can see a little bit about here, covers more than just the parish of Bushey, but it does cover Bushey with a number of other parishes in the area. So the GRO reference, the index reference there, doesn't tell us on its own where the marriage took place. We would need to get a copy of that certificate. But of course, in theory, if the marriage took place in a Church of England parish church, we would expect, or at least hope, to find the marriage in the Find My Past Hertfordshire Marriages database, which we'll go back to here. So we can do this search again. We'll put in Edward Treacher, we'll spell it right, Edward Treacher, put in 1849, and we can put in Sophia Betts here as well. We don't need to, but you'll see here that it's saying no results found. Now, there's a problem here clearly, because that marriage should be somewhere in this database, or at least we would expect it to be. If we try this, let's just remove the name Edward Treacher. We'll leave 1849 in there, and we'll take out Sophia's details as well, but we'll add the parish of Bushey. So we now have the place name of Bushey, 1849 plus or minus 2 years, and we're getting the result, no results found. When we start looking more closely, it becomes apparent that the database doesn't include any marriages at all for Bushey between July 1837 and June 1866. A whole register is missing from the online collection. Now we can go to the Hertfordshire Archives catalogue and have a look for some information about Bushey Parish. Now, what I always use to get into this is this wonderful list that they produced, the Hertfordshire Archives produced, of all the parishes with the reference numbers. And if we scroll down, we'll see that Bushey has the reference DP26. So I'll go back to the catalogue, type in DP26, then we should get the result for Bushey Parish, and there it is, Bushey St James Parish Records. So we'll click on that, and then we can go to browse this collection, and we'll see that the registers, which come under incumbent and service of the church, we've got a number of registers here. Registers of marriage, we can click on registers of marriage, and we'll see that, just a minute, here we go. There is a register of marriages covering the years 1837 to 1866. That's its Hertfordshire Archives reference, DP 26-1/6. It's clearly there in the catalogue. It exists. It's available on microfilm at Hertfordshire Archives, and it should be available on Find My Past, but it's not. Now, this missing register, the marriage register in question, includes 500 marriages. That's 500 records of 1,000 names, which should be in the Hertfordshire Marriages collection on Find My Past, but aren't. And it would be perfectly reasonable to conclude that your failure to find the marriage of Edward and Sophia means that the couple didn't get married in Bushey, or indeed elsewhere in Hertfordshire. After all, we're led to believe that the collection is complete. The Find My Past website has told you that it includes marriages at Bushey from 1685 to 1915. And if you check the HAL's catalogue, you'd get confirmation that the relevant register is part of their holdings. But you'd be wrong. Edward and Sophia were married at St James Bushey, and we can see the record of that marriage here. They were married on the 11th of November 1849 at the parish church in the parish of Bushey in the county of Hertford. The entry is in the parish register, but the register isn't in the database. And there is no reason whatsoever, other than the register somehow being overlooked in the digitisation process, for it not to be part of the collection. Now, I reported this omission to Find My Past back in May 2019. So here's another example of a missing register. Our subject this time is a man called William Field. William and Susanna Field had at least 8 children baptised at the East London Parish Church of St Matthew, Bethnal Green, between 1793 and 1814. The baptism of the youngest child occurred just 5 days before the burial of Susanna, aged 42, again at St Matthew, Bethnal Green. And we can see Susanna down here of Hare Street, buried on the 9th of October 1814, aged 42 years. And you can see the parish is St Matthew, Bethnal Green, Middlesex. Now, several of the children grew up and married in Bethnal Green, and it's very clear that the family stayed in the area, but a search for William's burial doesn't turn up anything promising. So we can search here for William Field. This is on the Ancestry London, England, Church of England Deaths and Burials database. And we'll run a search, and we'll just put in the keyword Bethnal down here just to restrict it to burials in Bethnal Green. And we can see that there are just a few, there's 3 records here of people called William Field or similar, but none of them look really likely to be our person. He was born about 1765, so these people are all just too young to be the person we're looking for. So we can try a few alternative searches, and we could take out Bethnal Green and instead put in the year of birth, approximately, we'll put 1765, plus or minus 10 years, and we'll run that search. And this time we get 28 hits. Some of them are of vague interest. There's one here from St Anne's Limehouse, which is not too far away, and another one here, St Leonard, St Mary Bromley, both in Tower Hamlet, so not too far away. But I'm not convinced by any of them. William was a Bethnal Green man. He was a weaver, very localised industry. And although he could have gone on to live with a relative after his wife's death, it just seemed more likely to me that he would have stayed in the Bethnal Green area and died there. Now, Bethnal Green was one of London's most populous parishes, and in the early 1820s it saw roughly 500 burials a year. But if we search here for, we'll take out the name completely and just put in a year of death, or burial in this case, of 1830 plus or minus 5 years, and again we're going to put in Bethnal here to restrict it to Bethnal Green entries. And we'll see that what we get is not quite what you'd expect for a very, very populous parish in the East End of London. There are 25 entries, the first of which is just obviously a mistranscription. and the rest of them from May and June 1832, when you view the actual entry, you'll see that it's indeed a workhouse, and the year of death is not 1832, but very clearly 1932. So there are effectively no records of burials for St Matthew's, Bethnal Green at this period. And in fact, if you search on a little further, you'll find that there are no records on the database for any burials in the parish between April 1823 and August 1836. Now, if we go to the archives catalogue and do a search for St Matthew, Bethnal Green, we'll see that we can bring up a list of the parish registers for St Matthew, Bethnal Green. Just click down here and we'll go to parish records, and we'll see a long list of parish registers. Unfortunately, they don't have the dates of the registers here, but if I go to register number 91, we'll see that it covers 1817 to 1823. And if I go to register 92, we'll see that that's 1823 to 1828. And we'll just click one more on. We'll go to number 95. And we'll see that number 95 covers 1833 to 1836. Now, there are in fact 4 registers here. And you can see here that it says available online via ancestry.co.uk. The problem is that they're not. Now, in fact, there are 4 registers missing. Each register includes 2,400 entries. So that's very nearly 10,000 burials of people who died over a 13-year period in the East End of London, which simply are not included in the London, England Deaths and Burials database on Ancestry. And again, these are records that should all be accessible on the Ancestry website. The LMA catalogue, as we can see here, even tells us that they are, but they're not. Now, how many times over the past 10 years have people searched for the burial of an ancestor who was buried at Bethnal Green sometime between 1823 and 1836, and assumed, when they didn't find the record, that he or she must have died somewhere else? Or worse than that, assumed that the record of a burial of someone with the same name in a different parish related to the person that they were looking for. Now, I've seen the missing registers, or rather digital copies of them, via the Family Search website, which you can access at family history centres and affiliate libraries. Of course, they're not indexed, so I'd have to go through all 4 registers to find William Field's burial, but I'm pretty sure that it is in there. Now, let's just illustrate this, because here's a man that I know died in Bethnal Green at this time. He's a man called Samuel Bouvier. He wrote his will in 1829, and his will was proved in 1831. So we've got a very fixed period in which to search for his death or burial. And if we search on Ancestry, we won't find anything. But if we view the register on microfilm at the London Metropolitan Archives, or indeed through the Family Search website, we will see that his burial is indeed there. There's Samuel Bouvier of Cambridge Road, buried on 25th of August 1831 at the parish of St Matthew, Bethnal Green in Middlesex. The problem with all of this is that researchers will rightly assume that by searching the relevant database, they have covered these registers, and assume, when they don't find it, that the record they're looking for doesn't exist. Well, there's a good possibility that it actually does. Or worse than that, they'll find a record that looks like it could be the right one and go for that one instead. I'm going to look into that in more detail in another talk that I'm also doing at Roots Tech called Don't Believe the Hints. You can catch that elsewhere. So we need to be aware of all this when we're doing our searches. The absence of a particular record doesn't necessarily mean that the record doesn't exist. It may just be that it's not part of the collection that you're viewing. And that may be for one of the reasons I mentioned right at the start of this talk, but it might be because something has gone wrong during the digitization process and that the record that should be there is missing. We need to be aware of the gaps in these collections. We need to report them to the relevant website, and then we need to keep the pressure on to get something done about them. I hope this has been useful. Thank you for listening.